Ladies and gentlemen, we are very fortunate today to have with us a very eminent scholar on the Chinese diaspora in Asia, and specifically on the history of the Chinese community of Penang. Dr. Wong Yee Tuan is Vice Dean, cum Assistant Professor of the Graduate School of New Era University College. He obtained his PhD in History from the Australian National University. Dr. Wong has published 3 books related to the history of Penang, and also articles in local and international journals, such as Frontiers of History in China, the Copenhagen Journal of Asian Studies, Chinese Southern Diaspora Studies, Journal of the Malaysian Branch of Royal Asiatic Society, Journal of Malaysian Studies, and the Malaysian Journal of Chinese Studies. Dr. Wong will be speaking to us today on the history of the Hokkien migration and business networks in Penang. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Dr. Wong Yee Tuan.
Good morning, everyone, and especially to my Penang Pen You. And I'm glad to be back to Penang and to share with you all on the history of Hokkien migrations and business network in the 19th century Penang. And I will go a bit faster because of time constraint and a bit wordy. Today's presentation, I will look at the Fujianese, or better known as Hokkien merchants, and who were the largest group among the Chinese merchants and their migrations and business network centering around Penang. But the first part of my presentations, I will look at the early migration and emergence of Hokkien merchants in Southeast Asia. And the second part, it will offer overview of the arrival of the Hokkien migrants and their settlement in Penang and Penang Hokkien business network. We need understand the migrations and also the business network of the Hokkien merchant, because the networks and the migrations is important to the spread of the dialect, of the Hokkien dialect, especially in Penang and in the regions. So the presence of the Chinese merchants is in the major part of Southeast Asia, evident from very early centuries, particularly when the maritime economic relation between the maritime Southeast Asia polities in southern China, it developed and intensified during the Tang and Song periods. So by the beginning of the 18th century, the Chinese merchants played a leading role in the economic life in different parts of Southeast Asia and left their indelible mark on the region, especially the Hokkien. Okay, and the early Hokkien merchant in Southeast Asia. So before the Hokkien came to Penang, they were already in other ports in Southeast Asia. Okay, so they were not, in fact, they were not directly, those Hokkien came to Penang, they were not directly from China. It was later. Okay, so, and you can see that the Hokkien merchants' maritime activity in South Asia did not begin with the advent of the Western colonies. So before the Westerners, the European came to Southeast Asia, the Hokkien were already in Southeast Asia. It can be traced back to the trading expedition led by a Hokkien merchant from Dongshi, Jinjiang to Borneo in the 8th century. So however, the golden age of the Hokkien in maritime trade only appeared during the 12th and 13th centuries, when Quanzhou rose as the most important seaport for China's foreign trade, as well as the most famous shipbuilding center in the country. So during this period, Hokkien merchants were even more actively engaged in trading emporia in Southeast Asia, such as in Champa, Annam, that's modern-day Vietnam, and Java. These trade port polities were frequented by the Hokkien merchants of the time. And when the development of maritime trade, Hokkien merchants started to sojourn overseas. So you have, for example, as one Wang Yuanmao, as a Hokkien merchant from Quanzhou, who went to Champa to trade. He married a princess of Champa and stayed there for 10 years. In Eastern Java, and many Hokkien merchants, they were found settling down among the local Javanese and the Muslim traders. And So you can see that the Hokkien were already in these three port polities in Southeast Asia. But in the that's the period between 15th, 17th century. Because of these three factors, and Zheng He 7 Sea expeditions between 1403 and 1433, and the lifting of the ban on the private maritime trade in 1567, and the reopening of the coastal trade 1683 under the Qing dynasty, it brought a new level of non-state Chinese movement into the engagement with Southeast Asia. It means there were more Hokkien coming to Southeast Asia. So the 7 imperial voyages, that's from Zheng He, and the tens of thousands soldiers, sailors, navigators, laborers, many of these crews originated from Fujian and possessed a rich seafaring experiences. So Zheng He recruited many of these, the sailors, even from Fujian, because they had rich experience in seafaring. So over a period of time, so these are the places that Zheng He visited. You've got Siam, Kelantan, Bahang, Java, Surabaya, all the way to Africa. And so many of this crew, they did not all of them followed Zheng He to go back to China. Some of them, they settled in the ports. Okay, some of them, they settled in the ports. And so you can see Zheng He, that's voyage, and then it moved to the Tortoise Island and disinterested and the embargo. Then after the Zheng He expedition, China closed door. So no more foreign trade. But there were tribute missions. There were those ports and those Malay kingdom in Southeast Asia. The Sriwijaya, for example, they're still sending tribute to China, okay, to the emperor of China. So these tribute missions, it reached peak in the 15th century. So you can see that it was in 1567, a new Ming emperor in Muzhong acceded the Fujian authority and repeated petition on the repeal of the maritime trade bans. So again, China opened up again, okay, to foreign trades. So you can see that a large number of Chinese junk, Chinese vessels went to Southeast Asia. So Manila was one of the Southeast Asian ports most frequented by the Hokkien merchants since the lifting of the Ming ban on the south. So the junk trade between Fujian and the Philippines in the 1850 involved trading in silk for silver, and which turned out to be particularly profitable for the Hokkiens. At the time, there was a high demand of silver in China. So because of it was very valuable. So what the Chinese had is silk. So they went to went to Philippines and to do a barter trades, okay, and to obtain the silver. So this is the old, what you call that, Asian port that had direct and indirect trade with China before the 15th century. So some of the old ports. And then the next one, that would be the China trade routes to Southeast Asia. So you can see the trade routes, okay, from port to port. Along the coast, the coast of Southeast Asians, from the mainland to the archipelago. And then you have the Fujian province, okay, there's Zhangzhou, Quanzhou, okay, and Xinhua and Fuzhou. You can see that why Hokkien, is easily accessible for the Hokkien to the sea because of the geographical locations. And this is the Chinese migration to Southeast Asia. So you can see that how China, that's how the Hokkien or the Chinese migrant, they move out from China. First, they will go to where it's close to China, like in Annam, there's modern-day Vietnam, the Philippines, and then to Borneo and to Java Island and to Malay peninsulas, okay? And Hokkien population in Southeast Asian port. So how many were these Hokkien in the ports, in the Asian ports? Okay, that's before Penang was established by the British. And so apart from Manila, Hokkien merchants also patronized the major Southeast Asian ports such as Hoi An, Penang, Batavia, Ayutthaya. They came to this port not only to conduct entrepot trade, but also to establish sojourning mercantile community. That means they sojourns. They will stay in the port for some years before they went back to China. So Hoi An is another important destination for silver traders, had one of the districts along the riverside occupied by the Chinese who were mainly Hokkien. there were reportedly some 4,000 to 5,000 in Hoi An by 1642. And Ayutthaya, it was another port that had many of these Chinese migrants. By 1680s, there were 3,000 to 4,000 Chinese, and mostly Hokkien, living outside the walled city of Ayutthaya. So Bantein, across the sea, as a major pepper port for China trade. So another port that's in Indonesia. That's Indonesia. That's also had Chinese merchants, and there were about 3,000 of Hokkien forming the largest group of the foreign traders in Bantein. And then in Batavia, so that's in 1619, and then it was the headquarters of the whole Dutch Asian trade network. It quickly became another major concentration of Hokkien merchants under the Dutch active encouragement of Chinese immigrations. By 1632, and there were 2,390 Chinese in Batavia, constituting 45% of the free adult male population. So majority of them were mostly Hokkien. Why? Because So Ping Kong, that's a Hokkien from Tong An, Fujian, was made captain, or later the Capitan, from 1620 to 1636. So it's prior to the 18th century. You can see all these Chinese, they settled there, as a merchants. But later, in the 18th century, you can see the change. There were others, the merchants, there were the miners, planters, shipbuilders, mariners, and adventurers. They all came to Southeast Asia, and the Hokkien, this Hokkien merchant who already settled in the port, they started to involve in productions, not only trade, bean productions, and plantations. And so Batavia and Hokkien were essentially traders. So now that you can see they engaged in sugar estates, in sugar estate. They finance, in Pangka in 18th century, for example, the Hokkien merchants from Palembang and Batavia financed the Hakka to work in the mines. So the Hokkien financed the Hakka to work in the mines. So the stiff European competition of pepper stimulated Chinese involvement in growing the cash crop on the large Riau, Brunei, and Terengganu. It's no surprise that Hokkien merchants of the time had invested in such profitable endeavor. So thanks to the Hokkien, so now the shipping network and also there's population experience unprecedented growth in the 18th century Southeast Asia. You can see that there were more Chinese people in Southeast Asia, especially the Hokkien. Southeast Asia, by 1739, Batavia had 14,800 Chinese, reached as high as 30,000. And the Chinese population of Pepper and Gambia, plunder of the island of Bintan, number about 25,000 in 1780. So they example a formidable economic position on account of their well-developed networks of maritime trade. So significant agricultural and mining industry, it was such a mercantile network and the business network crucially developed and sustained the port quality of the coastal hinterland in Southeast Asia. So you can see that, now the those port, there were many Hokkiens, and then later something happened. That's in the later half of 18th century. The Hokkien merchant community were vulnerable to political disorder in the region. The period 1740 to 1784, it witnessed a separate violence wreaking havoc on the Chinese settlement in the port polities. Some 6,000 to 10,000 Chinese were in the city of Batavia massacre. In 1755, the Spanish also chased away the non-Christian Chinese, from Manila. And then in 1767, you have the Burmese attack on Ayutthaya, and it drove away many of the residents in Ayutthaya, including the Hokkien who had settled then. Then in Saigon, it fell to the Texan, and more than 10,000 Chinese residents were massacred. And the surviving of Chinese took refuge to other ports, to Terengganu, to those smaller ports in the region. And so having this phenomenon in view, you can see that, this century, the 18th century, is not only you see the dynamic of the Southern Chinese of the different occupation opening the Southeast Asian economic frontiers, but also its massive internal Chinese migration from major port polity to minor port polity. They're moving from a bigger port to a smaller port because in order to escape the political violence in those in the port. You can see this map where I put the red dot. That's where the Chinese, they ran away, they escaped, okay, from then. Many of them, they settled in the more peaceful ports in Malay Peninsula and also along the Malacca Strait. So, so you see, moving all this port, we would settle permanently, and some, especially the Hokkien merchants, they were ready to venture to more promising port which offer better security and business opportunity. So the Hokkien they always move around. They will find places they were safe and for business. So they don't settle in one port for long, you know. So like this one, Tan Chek Sang, Chen Song, for instance, a Hokkien who migrated from Riau because Riau was attacked by the Dutch. So he ran away, most probably left the port, and when the Dutch took control of it, first he moved to Penang, and where he was then for 10 years. Then he moved to Malacca for some years. After that, he making his fortune, and in the 3 former property, eventually settled in Singapore. So he went and settled in Singapore. And he was one of the earliest pioneers in Singapore. Another Hokkien called Lai Huan, I think most of you are familiar with this, Gu Li Huan, the Kapitan Cina of Kuala Muda. He was from Kedah. He moved to Penang where the British established the trading post in 1786. And he brought over 500 Chinese from Kedah and established a settlement in Georgetown. And besides, introduced pepper plants from Aceh to Penang under Francis Light help in 1790. So you have to thank Ko Lai Huan for bringing the pepper plant from Aceh to Penang. So this congregation of Hokkien merchants and their business activity play a crucial role in transforming the minor port into entreports, so which link to local, regional, and international economies. So it's important to have a place to have these Hokkien merchants, because where the port had the Hokkien merchant, it would become prosper. It will prosper and it become a very busy port. So Hokkien, very important to the port in Southeast Asia. So Chinese settler in Penang. When Penang was founded as a British outpost by Captain Francis Light, the East India Company in 1786, it attracted a mixed group of settlers. Among them were European, Eurasians, Malays, Jawi-Pekans, Churia, and Chinese. So of the Chinese settlers, many came from the surrounding state and not directly from mainland China. Only later, though you have the Chinese came directly from China. So as you see that, as I mentioned, that the Hokkien were already in Southeast Asia ports. So this can be gained from the a list of 405 Chinese inhabitants produced by the British for December 1788. So most of the head of Chinese household were from Kedah, Malacca, Patani, and Songkhla. A substantial number of them were shopkeepers. So I will show you this. You can see this. This is Penang. I think most of you are familiar with the maps, and also Penang and the regions. And you see that southern Burma, and southern Thailand, and northern Sumatra, like Delhi, Medan, and all that, and Perak. So this is all the region. I call it Penang regions because Penang, it was a center to these places. So this is the list produced by Francis Light. And it's very hard to to identify the name of the residents in Georgetown on this first column. Because the British, they recorded the name of the Chinese name they call Jie. Okay, Jie is not on the family surname. Like if Jie Wong is okay, you know that it's the person has a Wong surname. But it normally called for Wong Yee Tuan. So you can't really tell, so until today, I still can't really figure out whether they are, what family surname they have and which direct group they belong to. But what I can know from this list, at least who were they? How many members in the household? When these Chinese moved to Penang, they brought the whole family, seven to 8 members in the family. Then you have this, the occupations of these migrants. These are migrants, they moved to Penang. Many of them, they were shopkeepers. And where are they from? Many of them, in fact, they're from Kedah and Malacca, from the adjacent port. So this is the population of the town of Penang in 1788. That's 2 years after the landing of Francis Light. And you can see European 19, only 1.48%. Portuguese Eurasian 197, 15.35%. Jawi Balkans, Malay is 530, 41.30%. Chinese 537, 41.85%. So Chinese form the largest group, ethnic group. Okay, that's and then about 20 years later, in 1818. So you can see that the number of the Chinese increased, but it was not the biggest group. It was not the majority. They did not form the majority. So it's the Chulia and the Bengalis, they form the majority, 45.3% of the populations. But you can see you have Arabs, okay, 84, then the Siamese, only 1. And these Chinese, you may ask, who were these Chinese? Were they Hokkien? Were they Hakka, Cantonese? So the British record didn't say anything about this. But I guess at least at the first 30 to 40 years in Penang, these Chinese, majority of them were Cantonese. So the Hokkien, later the Hokkien outnumbered the Cantonese. Okay, I'll show you later. Because it's based on this record. So why I say that in the first 30, 40 years in Penang, why the majority were Cantonese? When the British recorded the Chinese Association in Georgetown, they use Cantonese pronunciations. You see the first one, Church Street, it should be Yi Xin Guan. So the HKHOON is Gun, is in Cantonese pronunciation. In Brangin Road, you have Wo Sang Gun, okay, and then Ujung Pasir, you have Hoi San Gun, is Hai San Guan, and Brangin Road, you have Chong Chang Gun, Chong Qing Guan, and Brangin Wai Zhao Gun. There is very Cantonese pronunciations. King Street, Yan Wo Gun, and King Street is Yan Seng Gun. So all this is in Cantonese. But later you see that the British switch in the later part, in their colonial documents, they use Hokkien pronunciations. So you can see, then later, I argue that later the Hokkien outnumber the Cantonese. And you can see in 1874, you can see that the Chinese had really increased dramatically. You can see that very huge Chinese populations, 23,911, okay, 23,911. So then it's outnumber many, but slightly outnumber the Malay. That's on the Penang Island. But if you combine provincially, the Malays still outnumber the Chinese, okay? And you can see that, so that's why I say that Cantonese might have migrated, because the Cantonese, they very fast, they came to Penang compared to Hokkien. Hokkien, in fact, there were some in Penang, but the number was small. So the Cantonese were from Calcutta. So Calcutta was already opened up by the British in the early of the 18th century. So in fact, there were already some Hokkien from the Ku clan came to Penang before the British. So according to the record of the genealogy of Singang Ku and the Chan Kong clans, a Ku clansman named Ku Mo Liang was born in Penang as early as 1775. So don't think that before the Chinese only came after Francis Lai landed. No, they were already Chinese, the Hokkien, okay, in Penang. So ultimately, the number of Hokkien migrants outnumbered the Cantonese. So the leading Hokkien merchants outmaneuvered the Cantonese merchant and succeeded in established dominance in shipping, trade, tin mining, and opium business throughout the century. So you could see how the Hokkien outnumbered the Chinese, and then also they did better than the Cantonese, control all the major business. So different type of the Chinese in Penang Island in 1881. So you can see now Hokkiens, in fact, they were the majority. You can, the Macaus, that was the Cantonese, the second largest group. Then you have the Straitborn, and they were the Baba and the Nyongya. So there's, of course, many of them, they were Hokkien speaking. And you have the Teochew, 5,335. You have the Ket, the Hakka, and then you have the Hai Lams. So only in 1881, the British started to classify the Chinese into different dialect groups. before that, they did not. They did not, okay? So they just lumped together, they were Chinese. Okay, so these are some of the Hokkien merchants in Penang. And the top 5, one is from the big 5, Kong Si. You have Ku Tian Tek, and you have Chia Zu Yu from Chia Kong Si, and Lim Ket Chuan from Lim Kong Si, and Tan Wee Gi, that was Tan Kong Si. In fact, he was more based in Phuket, but he had a close connection with the Tan Kong Si in Penang. And then you have Yo Wee Ka, okay, with Yo Kong Si. And they had close connection, relationship with the 5 others, Hokkien families, okay, Ko Sim Bi, Gang Ngok Bi, Ko Siang Tat, this was the great-grandson of Ko Lai Huan, there's Po Heng Leong, and Ong Hon Chong. So these are so what business they control? So these members, the merchants from the big 5 families and other Hokkien families, they control major business in Penang, shipping. So first is shipping. The Hokkien merchants, when they moved to Penang, they brought their junks. So you have to bear in mind that when Chinese Hokkien move, when Hokkien they move from one port to another port, they brought their networks. Okay, they brought all they have. Okay, networks, whatever they own, even junk. So this is a Chinese junks. This is a Chinese junk in Penang. At the top, that is a small one. And then at the bottom, there is a Chinese junk in Nippon Tepao. That's in Province Wellesley. Okay, so then later, the Chinese, they still use junks, but they bought other vessels that could sail faster. Okay, just like this Chong Mo, that was the biggest shipping company in Penang at the time, in the late 19th century, the importer for Penang. So the firm owned 8 steamers. So then you have the Go Guan. Go Guan, that's founded by the Kor family, became the largest shipping company. 16 steamers in 19th Hokkien of the prominent families, namely the Kor, Kwa, the Lim, the Yo, the Li, the Ong, and the Chia, amalgamated 5 shipping companies to form the Eastern Shipping Corp and LTT. So you can see shipping, it was so important, and they dominated. So this is the ships, okay? You can see the 2 bottom one that later acquired by the Hokkien merchants. Okay, there's the bark, the brig, the schooner, and the steamer. And owning all these ships, so what commodity they traded? So in Penang, in fact, Penang did not produce a lot of what you call that products, except like sugar. You have sugar in Province Wellesley, and you have coconuts later. I think some of you may still remember in the old days in Penang, on the island, you can see many coconut estates. And other products, they were in fact imported from other places, and they exported the products to other places, like pepper. Penang grew pepper for a very short period of time, just for, I think, not less than 10 years, because then the pepper market collapsed. Many of these, like Ko Lai Huan, first he planted pepper. You remember that I mentioned, he brought the pepper from Aceh, and then the Penang Chinese started to plant pepper. But for a very short period, then they give up. And of course, all the pepper to Penang, they're from Aceh. Okay, from Aceh. The Hokkien merchants monopolized the pepper trade between Aceh and Penang. So if you wanted to buy pepper from Aceh, you have to come to Penang. You could not go to any places, okay, or you could not go to Aceh directly. There was a German merchants they did before. He wanted to break the monopoly of the Hokkien. So he went to Aceh to buy pepper from the Achenese chief. Achenese chief said, sorry, I could not sell it to you. All pepper will ship to Penang. So you have to buy from Penang. So the German merchants had no choice, have to work with the Hokkien merchants in order to obtain pepper. So rice. Penang did not grow rice. You have very little. In fact, if you have rice, maybe in Province Wellesley, or in Kedah, you say, but it's not enough to feed the population in Penang. Why? Because the population in Penang increased dramatically, and you need a lot of rice to feed them, especially you have the laborers. you have the coolies. So rice, where they were imported? They were imported from Burma, from Rangoon. So the Hokkien merchant has ship sail all the way to Rangoon and to collect this rice and back to Penang. So Burma rice, they were monopolized by the Hokkien in Penang. So then another one, opiums. So don't think that it is in the old days opium legal, because it was very important to the coolies. So the opiums, so the Hokkien merchants obtained this selling opium right from the British. Because every 3 years you need to tender for this. So this is a very profitable business, because if you did not control the opium trade, you could not operate the mines and the estate, the tin mines like in Perak, because all the laborers, coolies, they consume opium. And very profitable, this business, tin. So as you know that, Penang re-exported the tin mine in Perak. Okay, so you have to remember this. Penang did not produce tin, but it re-exported. Most of the tin mined in Larut, they were sent to Penang for export. And this trade, tin trade, controlled by the Hokkien. The Hokkien even financed the tin mining in Larut. Okay, so this is the inflow and outflow of the trade goods in Penang region. You'll see Penang, how the products came to Penang and then re-exported. For example, pepper, Aceh, that's to Britain, Singapore, and China. Then you can see tin, that's from Perak, Phuket, and Maliwun, that's southern Burma. So Britain, Singapore, and to China, they exported. You can see rice from Rangoon, then to Penang, then re-exported to Sumatra, Perak, and Phuket. And you can see firearms. Penang was also a place, for re-exporting the firearms from England. So you need to control this trade. So how to control this trade, to monopolize this trade? How the Hokkien did that? Because the Hokkien had a very extensive network. So they call the business network or the mercantile networks. It contained 3 elements: family relationship, business partnership, secret society. Okay, so you have this network because they control this, they form this network, and they control all the big business. So you can see family relationship. There were 2 types: kinship and that's blood related, the lineage and the intermarriages. So blood related, you can see the grouping of the clan Kong Si. Okay, that's the Hokkien merchant were able to develop a standard blood related lineages. And then the second one is intermarriages. Okay, they marry each other. They have their son marry a daughter from another family of the Hokkien family. And this is the big 5 Kong Si. I think this is still standing magnificently in Georgetown. So this is the reason why they can build such a magnificent, grand Kong Si house in Penang, because they were rich and they accumulated capital and they became wealthy. You couldn't see this, you can't seriously see in other parts in Malaysia. I would like to say that it would be the grandest, I think, even in Southeast Asia. Okay, so hopefully this will be preserved forever. Okay, and so this is intermarriages. So this is a bit complicated. So you can see all the Hokkien, the big 5 not only had their children marry each other, they even marry out, to other Hokkien families. They even cross-ethnic. They have their daughter married to a Chinese chief, and they also had their daughter married to a Siamese, the son of the Siamese governor. So you could see that why they did that, because of business. Okay, so then they could control the business. And secret society, I prefer to call it Swan Brotherhood Hui. Secret society was labeled by the British because British want to criminalize, outlaw the secret society because it was a threat to the British interests. And so you have the Hokkien-dominated secret society, the Kian Tek Tong. I think that's, you have seen that in that Armenian Strait, okay? That's the headquarters of Kian Tek Tong. And Gan Tek Thong, it was dominated by the Hokkien, and since its inception in 1844, so the locus of Gan Tek Thong was dominated by Hokkien business elite. The businessmen were the heads of the Gan Tek Thong. So you think that this Gan Tek Thong people will have an bad impression that they did all the bad things, extortion, robbery, and other that. No, in fact, they did not. Okay, they did not. And the Gan Tek Thong, you can see they spread. It's not only in Penang, you can find Gan Tek Thong. And in Burma, in my research, I found 40 to 50 over branches in Burma. It spread all the way from Rangoon, from the most southern port city in Mau Mein or in Malibun, all the way up to the middle part of Rangoon, of Burma. So this is the map. You can see the red dot. It spread all the way. You can also find Gan Tek Thong in Kedah or in northern Sumatra. So they have branches there. So you have a guess. What's the emblem of secrets of this Gan Tek Thong? The logo. Okay, you may think of maybe a spear, a knife, okay, or something that a sharp weapons or that. No, in fact, this is the emblem of Gan Tek Thong in Burma, a junk. A Chinese junk, that means they trade. Business, okay, is nothing that. So these are the Gan Tek Thong in branches. There's a headquarters in Penang. I think you know where it is. And there's in Mau Mein. There was, you can see that, okay, quite similar to this one in Penang. Then you can see a grand one in Rangoon, Gan Tek Thong. It's huge. It's, I think it's 3-story or 4-story of this building. And then you can see on the left, you have this, just a shop, okay, a grocery shop, and it was a Gan Tek Thong branch. So that means this Gan Tek Thong in Rangoon or in Burma, they deeply involved in business, especially rice trade. So got all this, all these branches located at the riverside, near the port, near the railroad, okay. So it was very strategically located. Business partnership, the third relationship. All these Hokkien, they form partnership. You hardly find a Hokkien at that time. They have it's a sole proprietorship. They always partner with each other. They don't only partner with their own ethnic group. They even partner with other ethnic group, with Chinese, okay, with Siamese. So this is how they control business, how the networks, how they form the networks. I give you an example that really shows this. You can see component of the Hokkien business network. You have 3 I mentioned to you: family relationship, business partnership, secret society. You see they overlap. On my left, there is Syed Muhammad Al-Atas, a Chinese. A Chinese, Ku Ten Bo, is a Hokkien, is from Ku Kong Si. They were close partner in business. Ku Ten Bo had a daughter married to Syed Muhammad Al-Atas. And the secret society they control, Gan Tek Thong, and Red Flag Society, they form alliance. So you can see how this business network, okay, the component in the business network. So with this business network, you see how Penang, the networks emanated from Penang to surrounding states. So you can see that even they have shipping, the shipping to Nicobar Island and Andaman. But so far I haven't found any Hokkien community there. But you could see other port city in Rangoon. Okay, so Rangoon, the Hokkien there, they were from Penang. So those Hokkien there, they spoke until today, they still speak Penang Hokkien. In Phuket, they still speak, old days spoke Hokkien, today still speak Penang Hokkien. Okay, in this Medan, I think you're familiar with this, they still speak Hokkien because of these trade networks. So it goes with the business. Language spread, okay, with the business. So conclusion, Penang Hokkien is a Southern Min dialect spoken by the ethnic Chinese of the Northern Malay Peninsula, namely in Penang, Kedah, and as far as south in Taiping, in Perak. So go all the way. I even suspect even in Telok Intan or Telok Anson, the old name, it also used the Penang Hokkien. And Penang Hokkien is, to all intents and purposes, the Jiangjiu subdialect. Zhangzhou is not Quanzhou. So that is the origins of the Penang Hokkien. So as one clan officer of Yo Kong Si proudly claimed that it is our particular brand of Hokkien dialect, which dominated the local vernacular, and which evolved into what is known today as Penang Hokkien. So the origin of this dialect reflects the origin of the Penang Hokkien, whereas its hybridity also reflects Penang's inter-ethnic and intra-ethnic diversity. So the evolution and spread of this dialect of Penang Hokkien to Phuket, Rangoon, and Medan, it reflects the business connections of the Penang Hokkien merchants with other port cities in Southeast Asia. Okay, thank you and 感謝。